The United Nations has refused to accredit 3 of our journalists, blacklisting us from covering the upcoming global warming conference in Marrakesh, Morocco. The 3 banned journalists are full-time professionals: Sheila Gunn Reid, our Alberta bureau chief and best-selling author; Megan McSween, our producer, formerly with Global News and Sun News Network before that; and Alex Jones, our cameraman and editor, also formerly of Sun News Network. These are total pros with years of journalistic experience amongst them. But the one-line excuse offered by the UN is that we are advocacy journalists, a term they do not define and has not, to our knowledge, been used by the UN before. Look at that. They don't even have the courage to sign their mealy-mouthed rejection letter. Advocacy journalism. Maybe the UN means opinion journalism, though how that would apply to our cameraman is uncertain. But opinion journalism is a legitimate type of journalism, and it comprised a large proportion of the 3,000 journalists who were accredited last year at the UN Global Warming Conference in France, and who will cover this year's conference in Morocco. The most striking video clip of the entire Paris conference last year was when an international agreement was finally announced, and the media room burst into applause and cheering, some actually jumping for joy. You know, the way objective reporters do. Here, take a look. Yeah, we're not being kept out because we have an opinion at the Rebel. We're being kept out because we have the wrong opinion. The UN just made up the excuse, because if we were indeed being blacklisted because we hold a point of view, how could the UN approve journalists who are literally paid propagandists for authoritarian regimes like China's Xinhua and CCTV, or even Qatar's Al Jazeera, or Russian's RT? Many independent Western media have an explicit advocacy orientation too, especially on the subject of global warming, including online media like Vice, the Huffington Post, and BuzzFeed. Canada's largest newspaper, the Toronto Star, they have an advocacy mission too, hardwired right into their newsroom, called the Atkinson Principles. In fact, the Star has recently published a series of advocacy articles about global warming, not marked as ads, by the way, even though they're paid for by the Tides Foundation, a San Francisco-based lobby group that bankrolls global warming activism. That's not even journalism, that's PR for a lobby group. But the Star is accredited for Marrakesh. The UN even welcomes global warming lobby groups, including community organizers posing as journalists, Greenpeace-style blogs like Canada's own De-Smog blog, attended in full advocacy mode, as well as other small websites like the Tyee and the Vancouver Observer, both of which are supported by Tides. Now, that's all fine by me. The United Nations' own Declaration of Human Rights says, everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. So the UN is breaking its own rules by denying us those same rights. That's pretty much how they roll over there at the UN. After all, it's an organization where Russia and China have a veto at the Security Council, and where dictatorships like Saudi Arabia sit on the Human Rights Council. So they're treating us like they treat journalists in Iran or Cuba. We're lucky they're not sending out armed guards to block us, which has happened to us before. Earlier this year, when Sheila Gunn Reid went to a press conference in Edmonton featuring Justin Trudeau and Rachel Notley, Sheila was met by an armed sheriff blocking her from the Alberta legislature, followed up by a letter from Alberta's Justice Department banning all Rebel staff from all government property in perpetuity. It was a scandal, and Notley eventually backed down, but only in the face of national condemnation. But Notley, even though she's a bully, still has to operate in a democracy. The United Nations bureaucrats, though, the ones who blacklisted us anonymously, they don't have to worry about stuffy things like democratic accountability. The United Nations has not even replied to our lawyers' polite requests for an explanation. 3 nonpartisan journalism NGOs, PEN Canada, the Canadian Association of Journalists, and Canadian Journalists for Free Expression, they've each written letters to the UN in support of our application too. They have been ignored as well. Of course, in many UN countries, they'd be in jail for having the temerity to talk back to the government. Well, perhaps the Canadian government can help us. The official name of this Marrakesh meeting is Conference of the Parties, and the Canadian government is one of those parties. Would Trudeau and Catherine McKenna, the Environment Minister, would they demand that the UN end its censorship of Canadian citizens? Yeah, it doesn't look likely. See, Catherine McKenna herself has blocked me on Twitter, as has her husband. It's personal for them. That's the online equivalent of what the UN is doing to us in Morocco. Gerald Butts has blocked me too. That's Trudeau's chief of staff, or principal secretary, excuse me. 2 years ago, Butts announced a boycott of all Sun media reporters after I insulted the late Pierre Trudeau on my TV show. It's pure speculation, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was someone from the office of Trudeau or Butts or McKenna or Notley who actually requested the UN to ban us. I'm curious how the UN would have singled us out, a new, smallish online news outlet amongst all the thousands of accreditation requests from around the world. But the UN won't answer our lawyers' requests for an explanation. We've launched a petition at letusreport.com to pressure the UN into reconsidering. You can see the UN's one-line reply to us, our lawyers' letters, and the 3 NGO letters there too. Please take a moment to sign the petition and to see those documents for yourselves. You'll be particularly enraged by the UN's dismissive excuse to blacklist us. But you know what? We're going to send our journalists to Marrakesh no matter what. Even if we have to stand outside the conference room and shout questions at the elites as they pull up in their fossil fuel burning limousines. We've done that before, chasing eco-hypocrites like David Suzuki down the street as they run away from our questions. These folks at the UN hate real journalists. They prefer cheerleaders, or at least stenographers. That's why they're trying to keep us out. But we're going anyways. We're not a state broadcaster like the CBC, which means we're independent. It also means we can't stick taxpayers with the bill for flying to this conference. Flying to Morocco is an expensive project for us. The flights were more than $1,000 each, and then there's hotel and other costs. If you want to chip in to help us crowdfund that, please do. And you can do so right there on letusreport.com too. What a perfect symbol of the UN and the global warming debate, isn't it? They're intolerant of dissent, they're arrogant, they're undemocratic, and they don't care. That's how they bully scientists who don't toe the line. No surprise that's how they're bullying journalists who don't toe the line. And you know what else it is? It's sad proof that the journalists who will be attending Marrakesh, well, they're all UN approved. That's what you should remember when you see the officially sanctioned reports from the UN. And it's something that any genuine journalists who are let in by the UN should stop and think about. Being an officially certified UN journalist. It's sort of a contradiction in terms, isn't it? Accreditation, eh? Well, being banned from a UN event is actually the highest form of praise and accreditation we could ever hope to earn here at The Rebel, don't you think? Visit letusreport.com and sign our petition to help us get in. If you care about freedom of the press, you've got to go to letusreport.com and click these links around me if you want more from therebel.media.